So Nick, can you tell us a little bit about your backstory and why you set up Alpha Wealth?
So I moved to Cork back in 1999, having been raised in London, and I studied at the London School of Economics. And I always had an interest in finance, but I had to reinvent myself because having worked as an investment manager, I found that there weren't very many investment banks in Cork. So I got a position as a financial planner with one of the main banks, AIB, and I worked with large banks for many years. But in 2014, I felt that I was getting a little bit tired of the corporate world and decided to set up Alpha Wealth, really to try and give more of a tailored focus and service in an independent manner to a lot of clients that I had dealt with over a large number of years.
And are you happy you made that move, into becoming a business owner?
I have to say it was really challenging at the start. They always say that, when you set up a business, you have to become like all aspects and facets of this. And whilst I feel I'm a very, very good financial planner, there are other aspects that I probably wasn't so good at. You have to go from being able to deal with post and every other aspect of dealing with day-to-day needs that the business requires. But having grown steadily over the last 10 years, and there's some really great people in Alpha Wealth, I have found that the transition has been fantastic, not just for Alpha Wealth, but for our clients. And I really feel that, it's been something that I would never regret, and encourage people, if they are considering moving into the, in business of kind of being self-employed, that there's many, many advantages of doing so.
And I think that's a big thing because there are probably a lot of people that are working in the corporate world and maybe have come to a stage where they're trying to make that decision about whether, they should become self-employed. And I suppose personally, I worked in the corporate world for over 20 years, and I think you get to a stage where you're kind of maybe ready for a change. So what would you say to anyone that is kind of in that situation and maybe looking for a change?
What I'd say is that there's definitely, pros and cons, but really for me, I just felt that I'd probably reached a certain stage. It was kind of like this crossroads in my career. And at the time, certainly back then, we were just coming out the back of a recession. People said that I was mad. And funny, years later, people said, well, how is it being out on your own? Even though there were, there's currently 12 of us in Alpha Wealth. But from a point of view of the learnings and really just, I suppose, excitement of being able to, run a business and seeing the development of individuals inside, it does make it quite fulfilling for me personally, but it's not for everyone. And I suppose really for everyone has to, work out where they are in their own financial journey and what makes sense to them.
And David, it's a big week for you, David. You're getting married on Friday.
Yeah, that's right.
Exciting times. I'm actually surprised that you're still sitting here. But anyway, before
Today's
you jet
my last
off,
day.
Can you tell us a little bit about, your own experiences, your own backstory, and why you joined Alpha Wealth?
Yeah, so I guess some similarities to Nick's story, but some differences as well. So I graduated in 2014 from UCC. Was working in one of the main Irish banks for a couple of years, started to get a bit of exposure to different elements of personal finance, from quite basic stuff like, accounts, credit cards, loans, right up to mortgages. I was actually working as a mortgage advisor just before I left Alpha Wealth. But I guess it's when I started getting a bit of exposure to the life, pensions, investments, financial planning, wealth management side of things. I started to kind of develop a real kind of passion for that. I suppose in the backdrop, I had a big kind of interest in financial markets and economics as well. It was obviously kind of strong subject for me in school, but I still wanted to engage with people and work with people. So I think a kind of career in financial planning and wealth management was the route that I wanted to go down. Now, I suppose at that time, the banks were kind of going down, they were taking the focus away from customers. They were downsizing a lot of departments, downsizing wealth management departments, closing a lot of branches. And I kind of got sick as well of being maybe a tied agent for the one provider. I wanted to be able to give clients the full market offering and be independent to really, improve their own financial situation rather than being tied to one specific provider. So I guess when the opportunity in Alpha Wealth came up, it was a perfect transition to get into that kind of impartial financial planning world. So yeah, we're 8 years on now and I've never looked back. So
brilliant. And what would you say to anyone, I suppose, you're getting married this week, you've bought a house, How do you kind of advise clients maybe that are in a similar situation to you, or what financial planning tips would you give to somebody maybe that's in a similar situation to you, in a similar life stage?
Yeah, I think it's important, Cliona, for clients to know that, like, even though we are finance professionals, we're not unique. We still go through the same challenges, the same, costs that life throws at us. I bought a house myself a couple of years ago, had to, save for that, cut back on a lot of things, and be quite disciplined in my spending, get a mortgage like many people in Ireland are getting, and obviously we got engaged then and have been trying to save for the wedding and the honeymoon and all that over the last couple of years. And I suppose when it comes to financial planning, we talk a lot about this kind of, balanced approach and, trying to focus on the kind of short, the medium term and the long term. And like I say to my clients, sometimes life throws things at you where you kind of have to take the focus away from maybe those longer term objectives, whether that's, saving for kids' education or building up retirement funds, to get over those short-term hurdles, be that buying a property or saving for a wedding. And then once the dust has settled, we'll turn up the heat. But it's about having a plan, really, and I suppose identify what your objectives are going to be in life. And sometimes, as I said, you have to prioritise some over the others. But having a plan, really, and getting the advice is important, Cliona.
Yeah, I think for me as well, I find that, being able to adapt is probably one of the most important, qualities that I try and, empower people with, and say to them that we've seen so many changes over the last few years, between COVID, rising interest rates, and typically with the way that markets have been, and being able to kind of check in with each other and review your financial plans, I think, David, as you said, is really, really important.
So for you, Nick, what motivates you as a business owner, and maybe what advice would you give to business owners that are listening in?
I think I've definitely, brought on another set of skills running a business, because it does enable me to see from the point of view of this kind of other hat, as I call it, where you look at the business and then yourself as the individual within the business. And there are slightly different facets to that from the point of view of, managing insurances that go with the business, how to make sure that your employees are being properly kind of paid and, given opportunities within the company itself. And obviously, David, you've been immense in Alpha Wealth, really helping us to kind of drive, and you joined at a very early start, which has been fantastic for both of us and the business itself. It's just having that kind of mentality. But in terms of motivation, it's that striving to be better. We're going through a growth phase at the moment, and it's been fantastic. And, even COVID, as challenging as it was, gave us an opportunity to kind of really kind of restock and reinvent ourselves. And definitely with the advent of even doing podcasts like this and getting our message out there, I found has really kind of got traction, and people can hear and see what it is that we're actually doing now.
And where do you get your motivation from? So are there any particular people maybe that you follow or that you kind of tune in to motivate you?
My biggest motivator has been my father. My father was a Greek Cypriot that came to London back in 1973, and he was a very, very driven individual. He had no money when he arrived in London, and he became quite successful in the property market. He bought a property, and then it kind of escalated for him. And even to the day he passed, and he was 90-something when he did, he was still working on the business. Now, one of the main things I try and get across to people is being financially independent at a younger age. It doesn't mean that they don't or necessarily can't work in their later years. It's just being in a financial position not to. And funny enough, I think I'm trying to find the right balance between this kind of striving to be better and to becoming successful, but also being able to then realize when you've reached a certain milestone that you don't have to work. Like, I'm 50 and I still feel I have at least 10 more years of what I call kind of that hard graft. And, again, I meet more and more clients who have gone through that kind of life journey with me. They tend to be around, similar age to me, where I can give them my own kind of personal experiences, having been through a separation and divorce to getting remarried, of course, blended family. And in itself, has made me probably a better financial planner than I would have been typically without those experiences, and being able to kind of deal with the financial implications of all that throws with it.
It's like they say you should go to a doctor that's kind of a similar age to you, because they'll know exactly what you're going through. So for you, David, like, is there anybody that maybe like you aspire to, or you follow, or, you know, that you go to maybe for financial kind of inspiration?
I guess just all around you, Cliona, similar to Nick. My dad also was working. He's working as a painter. Self-employed. Went through a very difficult time, obviously, with the financial crash in 2008 and the housing crisis. We went from being, you know, extremely busy, earning good levels of income, to, you know, work drying up, and really he's kind of, you know, threw that out the other side with a successful business. So I think he kind of instilled the I suppose the value of kind of a good work ethic, and, you know, putting in the graft really from kind of a young age. But from a personal level, really, you know, we always kind of strive to do the best for our clients. And, you know, one I suppose ethos that I've always had is always to just kind of make the right decisions for your clients, and always put the best interests of them at heart, you know.
And I suppose on that, you know, you talk about kind of financial impacts that happens to people throughout their lives. You meet many, many clients, you talk to many people every week. I'm sure you've heard of big kind of financial mistakes that people have made. And, you know, can you talk to us a little bit about maybe what lessons you've learned from this, or, you know, what mistakes you've come across, and just give some advice on that to people listening in?
I mean, I think for me, there's probably two things that I come across quite regularly. One is that we all got used to not earning interest on our savings, particularly during that period of, you know, really low interest rates from 2009, 2010 up to, you know, about 2 years ago. But when interest rates started to rise, we kind of became almost like inert, just inherently lazy, really, that we weren't going to seek better interest and deposit rates. So that's one of the lessons I would sort of try and sort of educate people in, and what are the different accounts that they can, you know, get better interest from. The second is, interestingly, on the other side of the spectrum, the longer term savings, particularly when it comes to pensions. A lot of individuals, particularly working for companies, in my opinion, de-risk their pensions too early. They either tick a default box when they join the company, which in a lot of cases isn't really appropriate for their needs. It doesn't know when they're going to retire. And then when they get closer to this retirement age, they essentially end up putting a lot of their money into cash because of maybe a prior experience, particularly from a story, say, during the 2008, 2009 crash. But the difference is that pensions are different now than they were in the past. And what I mean by that is that you now are entitled to a quarter of your pension when you draw your pension income at whatever age. But the remainder goes into a fund, and it remains invested until basically the time that you pass. So it's not just until you're 60 or 65, it's really until a ripe old age. And if you pass early, I know it's a bit of a morbid topic, but it goes to your next of kin. So the fact of the matter is that one of the biggest financial mistakes I think people make is that they just don't realize and appreciate the opportunity that they can get, this continued growth, for not just until 60, but until they're 80 and beyond.
And so, I mean, for you, David, like Nick has just kind of spoken there about interest rates and people not kind of exploring interest rates, and there's a bit of a kind of inertia out there. Do people need to have a lot of money kind of saved to explore these higher interest rate deposit accounts?
Not really, clean. I mean, like, the principles of investing are the same regardless of the amount. I mean, even if somebody has 10, 20, 50 euro a month to spare, it's about, you know, setting habits early, making sure that your money is going into the right place. And if your situation allows, turn up the heat on that over time. I mean, nobody starts a pension at, you know, 2,000 euro a month contributions, but it's about doing what you can and improving on that. Just to add, I suppose, what Nick was saying earlier in terms of maybe some of the mistakes that we've come across. I suppose at the opposite end of the spectrum, I suppose, you know, the key term in financial planning is planning. There needs to be some kind of plan there, and we talk about this concept of getting rich slowly, which is obviously the more successful way of getting, the more proven successful way of getting rich. But I think a lot of people in Ireland, they tend to kind of chase these get rich quick schemes, whether it's, you know, investing in the, I suppose, the flavor of the month investment or the next big stock or the next big cryptocurrency, and they just kind of go through the cycle of getting burned, and they just have a big misconception as to what investing actually should be, and they never really implement, you know, a solid, proven plan, which is what we always try to, I suppose, encourage our clients to do.
And so where would you say to somebody now who's got some money in the bank, maybe earning like little interest, where should they go to put that money? Or what would you kind of suggest to people in that position?
Well, I suppose the advice will be different for different people depending on what stage in life they are at and what their objectives are. I suppose what you decide to do with your money comes down to, you know, time frame a lot, and, you know, the risk level and the risk and reward level you take with your money is very correlated to the time frame that you have in mind. And we go back to this idea of kind of, you know, the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And, you know, people are sick of us talking about it, but it's nearly about having, I suppose, a separate pot for different time frames and different objectives. So, you know, we talk about the short term of being this kind of, let's say today maybe that 3-4 year period that might be, you know, going on holidays, changing your car, and maybe buying a property in the next couple of years. If you need to operate mainly in that short term space, you do need to stick to your kind of, you know, deposit accounts. Now, as Nick alluded to, we are no longer in a time where we need to accept 0% interest on, let's say, that short term guaranteed deposit kind of space. You see a lot of these new online banks now, like, you know, Revolut, Trade Republic, Raisin.e. Savers can get guaranteed interest rates in the region of kind of 3-4% per year from, you know, really good banks that have, you know, a credit rating that's a higher credit rating than most Irish banks, I might add, and the money is guaranteed under the EU deposit guarantee scheme, whereby if the bank folds, the government in the country that bank is situated in will step in and insure the money up to 100,000. Same thing we have here in Ireland. Now, once you are prepared to leave the money in an account or in a plan for longer than that kind of 4 to 5 year period, that's when we get into the investing space.
Okay.
And it's about, you know, chasing returns that outperform inflation and really getting your money to work for you. And the idea is that does come with risk and it does come with volatility, but you have time to ride out that short-term volatility, because one thing that history tells us is that even though markets can be volatile in the short term, over a longer period of time, they generally move in an upward trajectory. So it's about kind of having that plan between, and the difference between your, let's say, your short-term needs and your medium to long-term needs, and having different pots.
I think one of the things I find as well is that there's a big difference between financial planners and financial brokers. And the distinction I make between them is that generally my experience in the past, and I can say from, you know, having worked in the banks initially, is that we were always kind of very product driven. You know, essentially there were targets given to us, and if a client came in with monies, it was always given that we would provide them with some product that we felt was appropriate to their needs. And unfortunately, in some cases, we were tied agents, you know, so like AIB, for example, typically are tied to Irish Life, and Bank of Ireland to New Ireland. But in addition, you know, you made the point clear about, you know, what you should do with money. And one of the things I'd like to think, particularly for Alpha Wealth, and I would argue that this is kind of part of our USP, is that, you know, it might be better off in some instances to pay down debt rather than to invest. And it's not something traditionally that financial brokers, as I would refer to, as opposed to planners, would look at. Even on deposits, I'm surprised there was very few financial planners, brokers that even get into the realms of deposits. They're almost like half afraid of, you know, being able to impart that sort of knowledge. Social media has been another issue. You know, I've seen so many videos recently, particularly on TikTok and Instagram, of things like ETFs and this kind of almost like, you know, the armchair investor, as I would kind of refer to. And it's not that I'm against people investing in these types of instruments, these investments. It's just the fact that I talk about core and satellite. You know, that to me, and David mentioned earlier, you know, you need to have a proper plan, and trying to get that sort of get-rich-quick type investment, which is not their fault, really. I mean, again, they're only trying to follow advice or information that's out there, and it's a whole universe of different ideas. But I would suggest that that's more in that kind of satellite approach. You know, the core is just having these proper principles and building blocks, you know, in terms of building financial wealth.
So you spoke about the USP. So Alpha Wealth's USP is finance made simple. And for a lot of people, you know, finance can be a really overwhelming topic. It can be you know, something that there's so many different, I suppose, aspects within finance, you know, whether you're saving for a house, whether you're going through redundancy, whether you're looking at your pension, you know, there's just so many different aspects. How do you make finance simple and simplify it for people?
Yeah, well, like I suppose as Nick said, Cliona, I think our industry overemphasizes products. You know, at the end of the day, look, let's call a spade a spade. People don't come to, well, most people don't come to Alphawell for a consultation to start the pension or to start the savings plan. They come for, I suppose, peace of mind, and they come to have more confidence in their financial future. Yes, that might that might lead to taking out various financial products, but I suppose what they get from the meeting or from the plan is, you know, confidence and peace of mind. You know, obviously all of us are finance professionals, and the one good thing about that is that we probably maybe manage our own money a bit better because we're in that industry. But there's great peace of mind, I suppose, knowing that, you know, once your money comes into your account, that you're making the necessary pension contributions to get you the life you want in retirement, that you're putting money to, let's say, your short-term savings accounts that's going to be there for, let's say, the emergencies or the rainy days, that you're getting money working for you, you know. And hopefully all our clients, I suppose, you know, have the same opinions after they're working with us for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I think so. And like, there's so much jargon in the industry, and I think, you know, even if you just listen to, you know, I heard an ad the other day talking about auto enrollment and PRSAs, and I'm just trying to sort of take a step back and look from the outside and say, well, do people really even understand like what these products are? And a lot of things I hear, you know, it's almost like trying to show people how intelligent you are. And whilst, okay, finance made simple seems like a very simple notion, it's explaining, you know, I don't normally go into real detail with clients about every nuance of the product. There is an understanding of trust. You know, we talk about the different types of products that are there, what they're trying to achieve for them. Fees are inherent, you know, there's so much different variety of how financial brokers can charge individuals. And it's quite frightening because whilst we are in a very heavily regulated industry, there's so much paperwork now. And it's almost gone reverse of when I started 25 years ago, where the industry was talking about getting into this sort of like no paper form. And it's gone 3 times as worse. And that's almost led to the fact that now people are kind of less knowledgeable than they were before because there's just too much information. So really, as I said, I think it's about trying to develop that client relationship. You know, myself and David have both been in the business and the industry for over 10 years. And we pride ourselves in being able to try and develop, you know, that client relationship where there is an understanding of being able to reach out in whatever area of personal finance. You know, one of Alphawell's USPs, and I've always prided myself on this, is that we don't provide mortgages, but we give independent mortgage advice. We don't provide deposits, but we give independent deposit advice. We give aspects of all types of insurances, including things like health insurance. And people are really surprised, and they're always wondering, you know, what's in it for us? And then we talk about this kind of philosophy of like farm don't kill. You know, you give advice and you give it over a long period, you build a reputation, and then it comes back, you know, and that's kind of one of the key kind of cornerstones of what we are trying to achieve.
And I suppose financial wellness, we talk about this in the intro to our podcast. It's a big part of the business as well, empowering people to manage their own finances. And we've done work with small companies and also big companies and tech companies like Google. Can you talk to us a little bit about the financial wellness offering that Alpha Wealth provides?
Yeah, I think this is all in part with this whole financial education. You know, I spend a lot of time with individuals trying to actually help them understand and have a better notion of managing their own finances. There's no point me just doing it for them and then leaving them off and expecting them to sort of follow those traits. The financial wellness has been really successful for us. You know, it's a complementary service that we've been providing to businesses. And we found there's been really good take up from individuals, and even taking Google as an example, fantastic company, you know, very generous kind of arrangements in terms of employee benefits that they provide. And there's no pressure, you know, and it's been really interesting for me trying to even educate them in terms of how their pension scheme operates. There'll be many individuals I've come across recently in Google that are non-nationals, you know, like myself, who may not even be planning to stay in Ireland for any length of period. And it's almost made them, again, inert about making any real financial decisions. and helping them to sort of understand, and even being able to draw some of my own experiences about having a pension scheme in a different country, in my case, the UK. It does make it a little bit more enlightening. You know, I'd say to any listener out there, you know, if you've worked in the UK, for example, for 3 years or more, you should be entitled to the UK state pension. And a lot of people who may have worked over the Irish Sea may not even be aware of that. And it's being able to sort of provide those nuggets that are real takeaways for them.
And David, I know you've worked with a lot of companies like locally in Cork, like Johnson Controls and other companies, you know, in the whole kind of financial wellness space. You know, what do you feel employees get from this offering?
Yeah, so I suppose, my own experience, I suppose, a lot of these employees of the big multinational companies, they have a lot of considerations to make, whether that's, you know, Nick talked about, I suppose, certain employee benefits. On the protection side, you have things like, you know, death in service and income protection. Sometimes I come across people that have actually taken out their own income protection policy because they saw some video on Instagram telling them to do it, even though they had it covered from their company. You get into the nuances of, you know, company share savings schemes, you know, pension contributions, the matching contributions from the employer. Are they invested in the right, you know, fund within their pension relative to their objectives and their time frame? So they have all these considerations to make, but they often don't get access to the advice to help them make these kind of decisions. And that's really where we come in and give them that independent advice. And like I say to people in these companies, you know, Alpha Wealth don't manage your pension. There's nothing in it, you know, for us, but it's about, I suppose, empowering you to make the right decisions for yourself and giving you that impartial advice.
Well, I think we've covered off a lot of topics here today, and we've got some really exciting guests lined up over the next few episodes. But I suppose we're going to wrap it up now shortly, because I'm sure, David, you're getting ready now to finish work and head down that long aisle. But before you head away, can you just give us one or two kind of reasons as to why somebody might reach out to you, David?
Kind of like what I took it back to earlier, Cliona, really, it's about one thing my clients always say once they come out of the meeting, because like we do really kind of get into the, I suppose, the nuances of kind of doing, you know, future projections to people. It's really about, you know, identifying what your objective is, outlining what action do you have to put in place to meet that objective, and then, you know, kind of projecting forward and showing you that the actions that you know you're doing now are going to get you to whatever point in time that you want to get to, and people get great, I suppose, peace of mind and confidence when they come out of the meetings after that. You know, it's not about products, as I said. It's really about, you know, empowering yourself.
And I think that's evident really from the Google reviews that you've had, which are really, you know,
absolutely
fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, David, I don't think he's kind of built himself up enough, but like, he is a certified financial planner dedication, which is one of the highest. It is the highest kind of level of regulation in Ireland. For me, it's really more about the team. You know, myself and David tend to be more kind of front facing, but there's so many other individuals involved in the business, and it's a great process. You know, and I feel very strongly about the fact that, you know, we strive to kind of provide the absolute best quality service that we can to individuals. And it's not just from, you know, the initial meeting, it goes beyond that, you know, from the point of view of the inception of, you know, anything that they require, dealing with the various different kind of, I suppose, cycles within the business, and even the follow-up. You know, I think the biggest thing for me is that people are surprised when we say there's no further cost to, you know, future reviews that they have with us. And they wonder then, you know, okay, this is very different to maybe what they would have perceived and understood. I mean, even financial consultations, I mean, for some people it might seem alien. You know, why would you speak to a financial planner? A lot of people look at Alpha Wealth and have some connotation about needing a lot of money. And where Alpha Wealth came from is, Alpha is the Greek, you know, first letter of the Greek alphabet, you know, and it's from my origins. And wealth is, again, it's basically relevant to the individual. However much you have or however little, a lot of what we've done of late is to help people understand about even managing, paying down debt, dealing with their finances, and essentially being a little bit more kind of forthright in sort of being on the front foot. And that's the one thing that I would say to anyone listening. Take control of your finances, speak to a financial advisor. We're a really, really progressive company, and I'm really, really kind of, I suppose, serious about the fact that we will always add value. There's so many takeaways that even from today, but there's many more that I'd like to think that we can impart on individuals.
And just before I go, where do you meet people?
So we've offices in a place called Little Island in Cork, Cliona, where we've been now for a number of years. But particularly since COVID, most of our meetings are actually through Microsoft Teams or Zoom nowadays. So whilst we always love meeting people face to face, we can do online meetings at maybe a time and a date which are a bit more convenient for people as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's been one of the advents of even COVID is that it gave us this nationwide presence. And, I had a meeting with somebody in Donegal recently, over obviously Teams where, but we'll travel. And more importantly is that, it's making that effort because, again, all I can say to anyone is we will add certainly value and will help you understand, your financial position and how to be the most successful you can be financially.
Brilliant. Well, wishing you every success, David,
Thanks,
this week for a very happy day. And thanks a million, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.